I feel like I'll have a stroke if I think of it too much. That you've got grown men that make millions and millions of dollars to sit in a front office and run freaking programs into the ground. I'm looking at you, Detroit. I'm looking at you, Bengals. I'm looking at you, Jets. I'm looking at you, Giants. They do such an awful job every single year with draft picks. Miss every time.
Welcome to Friends in the Corner podcast, stories and topics from around the state of Kentucky. I'm your host, Dan, coming to you from beautiful Lexington, Kentucky, back with another episode for you guys here today as we're going to talk to you guys about the 2021 NFL Draft. Last week, if you listened, I did a NFL draft preview with Angelo Carriera from ESPN Radio. And this week, I keep my tradition going of doing an NFL draft review. And there's only one guest I can have on for this, a very special individual indeed. So we'll just welcome in right now. Hey, Max Godby. I want to know, will you be my guest?
I've gotten to do so much media, radio, TV. I mean, the whole 9 yards, man. But I got to admit that is probably the best introduction I've ever had, and I feel like I say that every single time I come onto your show. You truly roll out the red carpet for me every single time.
I got it, man. You're one of the staples of this show, man. This show wouldn't be where it's at if it wasn't for your generosity and coming on here and helping to promote it all these years, man.
While that is 100% not true and very pandering to me because you do an excellent job on your show, I will take the compliment, though, because it's great for my self-esteem.
Yeah, man. Well, and this is another special episode to have you on because this is our third year doing an NFL draft review. We did 2019 was our first year. Which was the Josh Allen year, if I'm recalling right. And then last year, the 2020, and now the 2021 season has come and gone. And we're going to be talking about some of the Kentucky boys, where they gone, or I'm sure you've got a few feelings on a few guys that didn't go anywhere. And we'll get to that when we come up. I know Curtis Birch really wants to hear your thoughts on Drake Jackson. But Max, the last time you were on my show was the 2020 NFL draft review. So no, lots changed in your life in the last year, just even beyond the pandemic, man. So for one thing, Mr. Max Godby himself right here is now a daddy. And tell me, man, what fatherhood's like for you right now.
Every cliche that you've ever heard about being a dad, that you kind of roll your eyes when people say it's like it's a gift or it's whatever jargon or whatever catchphrase you want to add into it, man. It's all 100% true. I mean, like you fall in love with a kid that you've never even known before your entire life. You're like, oh my goodness, like I adore this thing, and he's looking at me like I don't even know who you are, kind
of thing. Yeah. So baby Judd Godby, man, he's a little something, man. I'm very happy for you and Ashley. Congratulations to you guys once again. And just a lot of cool stuff happened to Max, and it's really just awesome just to have some time with you on this show, considering how much we've gone back. And we can just start even just diving into the show as we get started here. So we're here to talk about the 2021 NFL draft and just kind of like we've done in the past, pick Max's thoughts about what he thought of the draft from start to beginning and see where he thinks things have gone in this past draft. So we're going to just start overall, Max. What was your thoughts about this draft? If you could grade this draft, how would you grade it?
Presentation was a big fat F, especially coming after a pandemic. You finally get people back in, and the best idea that Roger Goodell and the NFL can come up with when it comes to a PR standpoint is, hey, let's have a fan that looks like an idiot sit up and literally be an armchair quarterback and hand Roger Goodell the pick each time. Dude, we as a society are getting dumber and dumber every single day. We're so close, man. It's supposed to be like the year 2495 or 2501 when Idiocracy takes place. I feel like it's going to get here a whole lot quicker. So that was my first initial thing, was just looking at the whole presentation. When it comes to the talent in this draft, the talent was absolutely unreal. Especially you look at the amount of FCS Division two and Division three talent that was getting drafted as well. Not only just drafted, but drafted high. You normally do see a North Dakota State. You look at Carson Wentz, who got drafted to the Eagles first round as for North Dakota State, but you had another quarterback from North Dakota State go high. You had a Division three guy from Wisconsin Whitewater, which is a D3 powerhouse. Dude is an absolute unit of a offensive lineman. He went fairly high in the draft. Player from Delaware even got drafted pretty high. I think you're seeing so much. We've been in kind of a renaissance of college football. The game changed so much, particularly on the defensive side when it comes to just defensive schemes in general, and how every player is kind of morphed into a kind of utility. You've got linebackers now that are able to play in coverage and play very well, especially against these offenses. Now they're going to try to throw on you 70, 80 times a game. You look at the way that defensive ends, there's not really a true defensive end in college football anymore. It's more of a stand-up end like a Josh Allen, a Bud Dupree. You look at the way that you had a tight end picked first round, not only picked first round, but the highest draft pick of a tight end, and he's not a true tight end position. It's just showing that the way that college and Kyle Pitts, it's showing how these this rapid evolution in the game of college football over the past couple of years is starting to leak into the NFL, which is now making you ask the question, with all these old heads in front offices in the NFL and on coaching staffs also, they're stubborn. They like to keep it very vanilla. They love their pro-style offenses. Everyone saw what happened with Chip Kelly when he went to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I don't really want to try that. So it's going to be interesting to see which coaches are going to be bold enough to take this talent that can really take any shape, really see them do some pretty unique things that people aren't really keen to seeing in the NFL.
Yeah, I would say that too, that this particular draft does seem pretty stacked, especially on those offensive weapons like you talked about in Kyle Pitts, and a plethora of wide receivers to pick too. But I do have to say, man, I think you're being just a little hard on the presentation. Cleveland did rock it for that draft night.
Cleveland rocked it. I'm not saying anything about the location. I'm just saying that the NFL, once again, is completely out of touch. That's all I'm saying.
Well, there was definitely a lot of pomp and circumstance around the draft the other night here, but there was someone that was not present at the draft that we're going to be talking about here first. As we get ready to talk about the NFL draft, we can't escape the fact that the first pick was pretty well recognized throughout this entire process, and was pretty much a give me who the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to pick with the very first pick in the draft. Jaguars are a team that we've talked about on this show a lot because of Josh Allen a few years ago, and what he's contributed to the team. And now they seem to have finally drafted their star quarterback for the future in Trevor Lawrence. So chat me up here about Trevor Lawrence. How do you think he's going to fit in with Urban Meyer's Jacksonville Jaguars? And do you think that this is the missing piece that's going to help turn this kind of struggling franchise around?
It all depends on how good of a cardiac hospital that Jacksonville has for Urban Meyer.
Hey, now.
That's the biggest component of it. No, I like Trevor Lawrence. I do. I think he's a solid quarterback. He's a kid that's got his head on straight. Even though he did take a lot of heat over that Sports Illustrated article where he said, football's not my everything, and people didn't like hearing that. But besides that, the cat's he's got a real high football IQ. He's got a really good discernment. It's tough. And God help, because Jackson still hasn't truly invested in a right tackle. They've got their left tackle covered as long as you got your blind side, but there's still a couple of chinks in the armor when it comes to that offensive line that are missing a little. And it's kind of a similar situation that the Bengals found themselves last year.
Mm-hmm.
Not willing to put the money in to get a stout, nasty offensive line, and they invested it so much into their quarterback in Joe Burrow, which rightfully so. He's the greatest quarterback in college football history, but he can't do anything unless he has protection, unless he's got guys blocking him. And I just don't want to see the same thing happen to Trevor Lawrence. The Browns did something very similar. They drafted Baker Mayfield, let him get wrecked for a couple of years to where they almost broke him. They finally invested in an offensive line, and they made a run in the playoffs. So it's the Jacksonville's going to have to make some moves in this offseason, whether it's a few more trades to get the offensive line stout, give him a few more weapons on the outside as well. Say whatever you want about Urban Meyer, the dude can coach. It's just, can he coach at the NFL level? This is a new challenge. It's different. Everything about the NFL is so much different than college. And the reason why a lot of coaches don't adapt well to the NFL is because of the player coaching relationship. It's very different. It's not really a mentor to a mentee. It's you talking to your boss. It's a manager talking to a subordinate. And sometimes you're the manager, but your subordinate makes $50 million more dollars than you. And now you're having to convince them that you're right and they're wrong on a play. So there's a lot of different variables with it. I like the boldness that Jacksonville's been going with. And if you're going to pick a guy that's going to be the most well-rounded quarterback, Trevor Lawrence is the correct pick.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Trevor Lawrence turns this program around if he can. Max, before you came on the show tonight, I actually listened to our draft conversation from last year. And you mentioned that about Joe Burrow, is that if the Bengals do not invest in an offensive line, he'll be out of the league in 3 years. And obviously we saw what happened to Burrow this last year, getting hurt. And then what did the Bengals not do in this draft? Invest in an offensive line. Now
they did. They just invested in an offensive lineman with horrible character issues. But they made sure to get that wide receiver in the first round.
To be fair, horrible character issues is a staple of being a Cincinnati Bengal. That's part of the core. If you don't have a jail record, you can't be on the Bengals franchise. But in a way, do you feel like that's the same table for Lawrence too? If they don't give him protection, they don't give him help, he could be as beat up and banged up as a lot of these other quarterbacks have come and went.
I mean, 100%. You can only your body can only take those kind of hits so many times until finally your body just shuts down and just says, I can't do anymore. Hello, Johnny Manziel. Hello, Tim Couch. Hello, Colt McCoy. Hello, Sam Bradford. The list goes on and on. And well, golly, say hello to Brett Favre once he finally realized that you need an offensive line at the Vikings, and the New Orleans Saints almost killed him. That's the biggest thing that you need, and it's so cliche because you always hear you always got to have a strong offensive line, but it is such a staple of the game. And truly, you cannot do anything. You cannot be creative in the game if you don't have 5 guys up front that are able to not just block and just be big, nasty hogs, but guys that are smart, guys that are able to change the play around and see stuff that the quarterback does not catch. And that's a lot of things these guys that watch the NFL, that watch football, don't understand, is that the quarterback doesn't always make those checks. Very rarely is he doing that. It's the offensive line up front gauging it, seeing what's going on, and being able to flip a play or flip a protection. And the quarterback's not even aware of what just happened unless the offensive line's communicating it to the quarterback.
So Trevor Lawrence going to the Jaguars to join Urban Meyer to see what's going to happen here with this team. Hey, I'm a little optimistic about Urban Meyer. He has a continuous record that seems to be successful so far. Go to a team, win a championship, get in a controversy, leave. So there's a lot of high optimism right now for Jacksonville that you guys could get a championship and then get in some controversy later. The first pick in the draft was the Jacksonville Jaguars picking Trevor Lawrence, the Clemson standout from the ACC. But we don't care about the ACC, Max. We live in Lexington. We care about the SEC. It just means more here, as they say, right? And the SEC had a bit of a pretty significant, what's the right word here? But they had a pretty significant notice in this NFL draft. Of the NFL draft, 65 players came out of the SEC. At least one player was drafted from every single school in the SEC. And I mean, that's huge. I mean, I feel like every year we talk about the greatness of the SEC, but I mean, if you don't like it, try to stop them, but no one can. And I think this was another year that just kind of showed how significant this program is to not just college football, but to the foundation of the NFL as well.
65 good.
I would say so.
I think that's pretty good since that broke the record of how many teams came from one conference. And you'll have the SEC haters go, well, it was Alabama. And it's like, well, Alabama had 10, which rightfully so. That team was just an absolute juggernaut. There was no way of stopping them. They were going to win every single game by a lot because that's what Alabama does. But you had Kentucky that had 6. You had they got Vandy on the board. The wealth of talent, and I think you had the argument a few years ago that everyone within the recruiting game, and this was probably about 6-7 years ago, everyone when it came to recruiting was going to different schools. They were going to Clemson. They were going to Duke. They were going to Texas. They were going to Ohio State. The SEC was losing talent, not because of poor recruiting, but you had a lot of players just like this mentality of, why would I go there and not play? Or I can go to school B and be a star and go ahead and play. And I think you saw a lot of that where it really equaled out the playing field. The best talent wasn't going to the SEC anymore. And it kind of evened the playing field to where you had 2013, Auburn loses the national championship to Florida State. You had Ohio State beating Alabama in the playoff. And really the only competitive team for a couple of years in the SEC was Alabama. But then something changed, and all of a sudden the talent just came funneling back to the SEC, which I think you can make a pretty good argument because of the coaches that the SEC started to attract. Mark Stoops in 2013, the 2013 draft, one player got drafted. It was Avery Williamson. Now we're looking at 6 guys. You make the argument that probably 7 or 8 of them should have been drafted. Preliminary for 2022 is showing that could be as much as 10 guys drafted.
Man.
One, you can make the argument that may be the number 1 overall pick in Darian Kinnard. You can make that argument, depending on who finishes up the NFL season, who has the first pick. The amount that he's done to open the floodgates and attract the Ohio pipeline, reopen it to kind of keep funneling in talent from Florida, Arkansas, Alabama, Georgia, getting all these guys to stay within the SEC. And I think one thing is Kentucky's no longer cannibalizing itself with Louisville. I mean, when's the last time you've seen Louisville take a kid in the top 50 in the state? Not the nation, just the state. It doesn't happen. I think you've got so many teams that have been able, and coaching staffs that were able to refocus, revitalize, and attract that talent back to the SEC, to where you had that renaissance gap where teams were like, this is the chance that we finally catch up to the SEC. And I truly do believe a big proponent of that was Stoops being able to maintain that northern talent in Ohio State, Ohio, and Michigan, and then retaining the talent in the state of Kentucky.
Absolutely. And I mean, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. When you say here, he's had 6 people drafted. There are 6 players drafted this year, and he got another first-round pick this year out of it. And Jamin Davis, who we're going to be talking about here in a minute. But this was actually a pretty interesting fact. I didn't know until Kyle Tucker tweeted out the other day that Stoops has helped develop now 3 first-round draft picks who were 3 or 2-star recruits in Bud Dupree, Josh Allen, and now Jamin Davis, man. And that's huge, man. I know on the show, because we're Kentucky centric and these are our colors, this is our alma mater, that we kind of talk highly about Kentucky. But I mean, it's amazing just to kind of see what has changed in the program in the last 10 years and where it's at now. Like you were saying, back in 2013, Avery Williamson was the only pick, roughly so, great player. But now it's just changed so much. And now people are starting to recognize talent from Kentucky, thanks to Stoop and thanks to Big Dog.
Exactly. Well, definitely thanks to Vince Morrow. Yeah. That is the best investment that the University of Kentucky has ever made, was fighting off Michigan, then fighting off Michigan State, and fighting off Youngstown State for the head coaching job. Bud Dupree came in as a 2-star tight end. He wasn't even listed as a defensive end. And all of a sudden they did a vertical test on him. And Joker and company said, why don't we switch this guy to linebacker? He's got a really tall, he's got a really good vert. And that's when they blocked the field goal against Tennessee. It's because of Bud Dupree. The year that we beat Tennessee for the first time in 26 years. You look at Bud Dupree and the way that they developed him. 1 year. 2 years. He had 2 years in that weight room. And the work that they used for him was freak. That's what all the NFL scouts said about him. He's a freak. He was always talented. He was always a great, just physical athlete. But 2 years with Stoops, he turned into an absolute freak. Josh Allen was a 2-star wide receiver. Had no offers. No one. Vince Morrow found something in him and switched him over from wide receiver to defensive end. And the dude was an absolute animal on defense. And he played that bat position so well. And a bat is usually referred to as that guy that just stands up and just walks around. You don't know where he's coming. It's an offensive line's worst nightmare, because you're like, okay, I got this guy, but oh my goodness, Josh Allen's coming up. What does that mean? Does that mean that my guy's going to be slanting inside? Does that mean he's going to slant inside and I'm going to have to take Josh Allen? I have no idea. Okay, I'm going to panic. Let's just do a full slide. And then all of a sudden you're leaving the back end wide open at that point. And your quarterback's taking an unnecessary hint just because of presence. And that's what Josh Allen brought. They did the same thing with Jamin Davis as well and developed him like that. But I mean, if you're an outside linebacker and you just want to, you have admiration to become a Bud Dupree, a Jamin Davis, a Josh Allen, and you don't pick Kentucky, you're skipping out on multi-million-dollar signing bonuses. You're skipping out on playing, most likely playing in the league at a very high level. And you're skipping out of learning from the best to do it in Mark Stoops and Brad White. It's foolish for you not to pick Kentucky.
Yeah. And Jamin, as we talk about here, he's got an opportunity to join what's growing into a pretty big defense with the Washington football team who picked them, joining young and all that young talent, for lack of a better word, young talent that's there. What kind of impact do you think he's going to make on the Washington football team?
I think he'll make an instant impact, man. I think you're going to be able to use him when it comes to special teams. I feel like he's going to be a big special teams guy for you, and especially once he get his weight up a little bit more. But the dude's just already got just a gift when it comes to physical ability, and the dude's so keen on what we call getting skinny on the line. Being able, when he's making a rush or blitzing an offensive line, it's getting himself so small that an offensive line's not able to get his hands on them. And basically just turning his shoulder, turning that backside shoulder, ripping this arm up to where an offensive line is missing and ducking their head. And then you're able to finish them off with a backhand swing.
Are you talking from experience?
100% experience.
Just
because Bud Dupree would use that move on me all the time.
So we have Jamin Davis going to the Washington. I almost called them the name they're not supposed to go by, the Washington football. But we're going to be talking about
2021 of you.
I know, right? The Washington name redacted, just like Louisville's name redacted football stadium. But before we start talking about some of these other Kentucky players, we were just talking about Coach Stoops recruiting and the impact he's made with some of these guys. And as we're talking about these recruits that Stoops has had and all this talent that's been developed, it's amazing how things could have been for Kentucky as well. Because not too long ago, they were recruiting Mac Jones, and Mac Jones was actually committed to Kentucky until things changed and he went to Alabama. And Mac Jones was a part of this draft too, and he wound up in probably one of the best / worst situations you can talk about. And since he is kind of a sort of not really a Kentucky guy, I thought he's worth talking about here. But Mac Jones goes 15th overall to the New England Patriots. You literally got the keys to the convertible. Max, what's your thoughts on Mac Jones going here with the obvious big shoes he's going to have to fill out there?
Well, first of all, you're not going to be as good as Tom Brady. I mean, you're just not. That's neither here nor there. There's no debate about it. So that relieves the pressure. Relieves the pressure as well because you're not the first guy to step in since Tom Brady. That's Cam Newton. Thirdly, I can't think of another better person for Mac Jones to learn under than Cam Newton. Maybe with the exception of Tom Brady when it comes to starters. The mind of Cam Newton is truly unreal. His football IQ is through the roof. And his diligence to his craft is contagious. His teammates find it extremely contagious. But the thing that keeps Cam so young, that keeps him playing at such a level, even when he's getting to the age now to where he is getting older. I think now he's 4 years older than me. And for Mac Jones to get the balance of a high football IQ, learning from an elite player, but being able to instill that fun that Cam Newton has, I think is going to be a really good life lesson and a football lesson for Mac Jones. I think he's a great fit. I think that's what the Patriots really need is they've had a lot of success with that guy that's just able to just step back, just go through your progressions and dump it off to a tight end if you need it. I think that's what Bill Belichick is the most comfortable with. He'll ride the Cam Newton train for a little bit longer. You've got such a talent in Cam Newton. Why not utilize it? But Mac Jones is definitely going to be that future. And I think Cam's going to do a good job of grooming him into that once he retires.
Yeah, a lot of people say because of the connection between Belichick and Saban, they feel like he can kind of transition into this style a lot quicker, which I can agree with, especially it's from the learning tree, from the student to the master. So it's going to be interesting to see how Mac Jones helps rebuild this Patriots franchise and post Tom Brady. And obviously, like you said, Cam Newton's going to be a good fit there. But we can't talk too much more about Mac Jones because he didn't come to Kentucky. So we'll just leave that there. Nonetheless, we're going to start talking more about some of these Kentucky guys and where they went. So we're just going to go down the list of who got drafted here, and then we'll talk about the free agents like we've done on previous draft shows. And the next round, in the second round, we saw Kelvin Joseph go to Dallas. And what's your thoughts on Joseph?
Boss man fat. Dude's season with Kentucky started rough, but you talk about a dude that found his groove and one made Devontae Smith look stupid. The Heisman Trophy winner just looked real dumb. This is a great pick for Dallas. This is something that they're going to need. Dallas hasn't really been able to secure just that lockdown secondary in a good while. And for them to get Kelvin Joseph and kind of build that secondary around him a little bit, you've got to be excited if you're a Dallas fan because I think the dude's extremely quick. The dude's a ball hawk. He's able to read the quarterback's eyes very well and also anticipate run routes as well. I think this is it's a second round pick, but I'm shocked that he didn't go first round a little bit, just a little bit. But I'm glad Dallas picked him up. I think he's going to be a good fit there.
Yeah, I would agree. And he's going to have some company joining him from the sixth round as well, as Quentin Bohanna also got picked by Dallas. So what's your thoughts on Quentin going and joining Joseph out there?
Dude's a unit, man. He reminds me a lot of a Vince Warmick or Vince Wilford or a Raji from the Green Bay Packers back in the day. Dude is just a gap stuffer. He does such a good job. He's got a very weird quickness about him that you don't see in a lot of big guys like that. He's got a very deadly bull rush. He has a very great move in the run game, and defensive linemen that are able to do this just have so many years of success of being able to time a lineman's hands. So when a lineman's kick setting, you're waiting for the right moment to where they just get into just get right into your range, and you try to give a pop into their chest plate to stun, and then you go back recoil to grab onto the chest plate. Quinn Bohanna's got such a knack of being able to hit that, to get into that gap at such an angle. And his arms are so long that when an offensive lineman's about ready to shoot his hands, he's able to take both of his hands at that angle and grab at the wrists to keep an offensive lineman from locking up. And this is the worst fear of an offensive lineman, to where you've got your hands going up like this and you've got no leverage whatsoever, no matter how good of a base you have. Because at that point, you can lift up and you just throw down. You can go up and bull rush him, or you've got him and just start taking him to an angle if you're a part of a stunt and that defensive end just comes right around the corner and just lights up the quarterback.
Again, you're talking from experience, right?
Oh, definitely that was from experience. Kelsey Quarles from South Carolina did that one to me. I was on the SEC, the Sports Center top 10 for a week.
Is that where you got picked up and slammed?
No, that was Bama.
Oh, okay.
That's another time.
Matt, God bless you, Max, man. Thank you for putting your body on the line.
I've been on Sports Center's top 10 3 times, and I was on the wrong end those 3 times. Another time against Georgia, this was top 10. They had Chubbs returning punts, and he returned the punt for a touchdown. So it was against Chubbs or me, who was just chubby, and needless to say, I couldn't catch him. And then LSU ran a punt back for a touchdown, and it was 5 LSU Tigers running to the end zone, and Max just trying to work his way through.
Well, God bless you, man. I hope you're enjoying retirement, man. You've earned it. You've earned it very well.
I very much enjoy my retirement.
Well, man, keeping up with the 6th round, because there was a few guys that came out of this one. Brandon Eccles went to the Jets, the Jets, Jets, man. What impact do you think he's going to have out there?
Once you get to the 6th and 7th round, usually the rule is at that point you kind of don't want to go you kind of want to go undrafted, because that way usually 6th, 7th pick, it's usually a little bit harder to stay on the team. That's why guys say I'd rather go on undrafted at that point, so I can pick a team that I'm kind of a better fit for at that point, because you've got teams that will come back and we want to sign you on as a free agent, undrafted free agent. But I feel like Eccles just has the ability to stay on that roster and kind of show himself during summer ball or during preseason, and really make some noise. He's going to have to prove himself. They do have some depth there at his position, but I feel like if he's able to maintain, he had such a strong second half of the year. If he's able to maintain that momentum going in, I think he may be like a Lonnie Johnson that just kind of just showed up out of nowhere.
Well, that's kind of interesting that you said that, and it makes sense. We were talking about the 6th and 7th round, and I guess for lack of better terms, it's kind of just some gimme picks. Like, we'll just pick some guys and see what happens with them. Where being a free agent, you have a little more control over your placement. And so finishing off the 6th round was Landon Young, who I know you've been very high on. He's a Lexington kid. We've gotten to see him with Jedrick Wills in the past here in the Lexington area, and he goes to the Saints. So do you think that's a good fit for him, or do you think it would have been better for him to kind of stay a little farther off?
He should have gone higher. It just shows how really these people in the front offices in the NFL really don't know much more than you and me, to be perfectly frank. You had a kid that was an All-American. Kid was all SEC, played against the best talent that had to offer. 65 of them went into the draft this year. And he goes so low because of physique one, which I'm like, why are you looking at an offensive lineman for his physique? Like, that's dumb.
Batman B. Wall.
Batman B. Wall, exactly. But I think still New Orleans is a good pick for him. They're struggling a little bit on the offensive line right now. I think this is a place where he will make an impact. And again, this is a steal for New Orleans. It's very similar to what happened with Larry with Detroit. He's going to come in a really low. I say really low. He'll probably come in at probably about a $900,000 contract, something like that, for 4 years. They're going to blow out of the water, and they're going to be like, oh my goodness, this kid's a stud. Like, how are we going to keep him on the payroll? And they're not going to be able to because of the salary caps. So he'll wind up going to a better team with a better, much bigger contract, and it's going to work out for him. But I think it's going to be a similar situation of what happened to Larry, to where it be they're going to get a great player cheap, and they're going to be, holy crap, how do we keep them?
Yeah, hopefully that works out for Landon. Obviously, a hometown boy. We want to root for him, especially. And then finishing off the list of drafted players was Phil Hoskins going 7th round Panthers.
Phil Hoskins has got a good body to be able to build into whatever you want. If you want him to be a leaner defensive lineman, he has that ability. Get him a little bit heavier, he can be that that kind of bigger defensive tackle for your third and short situations. And he's been a consistent playmaker on that defensive line for UK as well. I don't know what Carolina. Carolina's got some depth at defensive tackle. This may be a situation where you see Phil Hoskins may get cut. That does not mean he's not good, because you'll get a lot of guys who are like, well, okay, we've got 8 wide receivers. Let's draft 2 more. Let's get some competition in the room. Guy really proves himself. It's like, but he's not quite where we want him. Cut him, but then they'll call what's it called? Other teams and tell them, hey, we've got a kid that we really think you would like, and I think you should give him a chance. And then they jump on their active roster.
Definitely going to be interesting to see how all of these players will wind up here in this upcoming year for the NFL. And it's just exciting to see. I know there was a few low picks in this draft, but just to even have just 6 players like we talked about draft from Kentucky, that's phenomenal. But while we are celebrating the fact that we've had this many picks, there are also a few that fell through the cracks here, like there usually is. And I just want to get your thoughts on some of them. We'll save the best for last. Don't worry. Well, let's start off here with AJ Rose. AJ wasn't picked. I don't think anyone was really expecting him to get picked, but he wound up signing as a free agent to the Vikings. And so what's your thoughts on AJ and the potential he could possibly have in the NFL?
He's definitely got potential. He's got a good overall. He's built very similar to a JoJo Kemp. He has that durability and kind of well-roundedness. Nothing flashy. I think what hurt him a lot is some of the stuff that happened during the Ole Miss game. I think that hurt him. I think there's sometimes you can question his decision making when it comes to attacking a hole, reading a center or a guard's hips. But the kid's got a burst of speed, honestly, going both ways. Either he works his tail off, makes an active roster this year, or the amount of hits that he took at UK, because running backs, you don't go off years. You go off hits. You go off the abuse that the player takes. And you see so many running backs will take their chance of not staying their final year to go ahead and get drafted, especially if you were like a Benny Snell where you took a lot of hits, or a Len Bowden that took a lot of hits. At that point, you're like, well, if I make it through one more year, I've just taken another year and a half off of my ability in the league. So it's going to be interesting to see the amount of hits that he took, how that's going to correlate into this year.
And the next undrafted free agent we saw go off the board was Boogie Watson's to the Steelers, man.
If you're going to go undrafted as a defensive player, this was the place to go. Steelers does a great job of developing their defensive talent, defensive undrafted talent as well. Boogie's a little undersized, which I think he's going to be able to make a name for himself in special teams. If he can make noise there, then you can do some really, really cool stuff at that point and kind of get some coaches' heads turning. John Connor, who was a fullback that played for UK, when undrafted, he wasn't playing, but they put him on special teams, and he absolutely started obliterating fools. Anyone that's listening, look up YouTube John Connor Terminator. Don't be make sure you put the New York Jets in it or Rex Ryan with it, because you will get the Terminator movie. But watching this cat just absolutely kill people on the field got him a reputation to where he made it to the active roster and had a very lucrative career in the NFL.
One of the other guys I have listed here is Max Duffy, who at this point, I don't know if he's signed anywhere yet. I know he was also drafted in the CFL, so I don't know if he's planning on going that route. But what about Max Duffy? Does he have any potential for an NFL run, or do you think he should just go to the CFL and kind of prove himself there?
Kickers, it's hard. I mean, it's really hard because they are. You can't just do one thing in the league. You can't just do one thing. You've got to be able to prove that you can hold. You can do place kicking. You can punt. You can kick field goals. You've got to show yourself valuable for that spot. And I am not saying that Max Duffy's not valuable. I think I was Max Duffy's number one cheerleader besides his mama. But if you're not bringing something else to the table, NFL coaches are going to be reluctant to bring someone on. Pat McAfee lied when he got drafted to the Colts. He said, not only am I a place kicker, not only am I a punter, but I'm a holder as well. Lied. And then he had to tell Adam Vinatieri when he first showed up, he said, never held a snap in my entire life. Can you help me? And that's how he became the holder for the Colts as well. That's the biggest thing. CFL may be a good route. I think you look at Austin McGinnis, that's how he got his Rams. To go the NFL, the XFL, whatever FL you want to go to, and develop some other talents, and the NFL will always be there.
And I've saved the best for last because I know you have a lot of feelings on this last one here. Drake Jackson went undrafted. Now, I think he did sign with the Lions. Am I right? He did sign with the Lions as a free agent. Okay, so he is somewhere now and can prove himself. But I know you had a lot of feelings about Landon Young not going high up in the draft. This guy didn't even make the draft at all. So what are your thoughts about this monstrosity? And why do you think he fell off?
Exactly why, because he's 6'2". That's exactly why. There's no other way around it. There's no other way to prove it. He's short. And to me, it is still, I feel like I'll have a stroke if I think of it too much. That you've got grown men that make millions and millions of dollars to sit in a front office and run freaking programs into the ground. I'm looking at you, Detroit. I'm looking at you, Bengals. I'm looking at you, Jets. I'm looking at you, Giants. They do such an awful job every single year with draft picks. Miss every time. And then the Detroit picks up Drake Jackson, and we're supposed to treat Detroit like, oh my goodness, they've got themselves a sleeper here. This was such a smart pick by Detroit. No, they were stupid 7 times in a row and finally got it right after he was still available. They just proved to be the smartest of the idiots. And to not pick the number 2 center in the country, not the conference, the country. You can maybe argue the 3rd best center in the country, Josh Myers and Dickerson in front of Drake. A guy that proved that he could play multiple positions on the offensive line, play both guard positions, play center position. Guy that was able to show toughness, be a leader. The guy showed toughness. He knocked his shoulder out of socket during the Senior Bowl. The second play, that he popped it in himself and continued to play. You're going to tell me you have all this stuff. He's playing 65 great players in the SEC, the best defenses that he will ever see in his entire life. Held his own against Alabama on the defensive line. And you're going to tell me you're not going to pick him because he ran the ball too much in 2019. That's a reason. He's short. Jeff Saturday, who is an all-pro, will be in the Hall of Fame, was 6'2" as well. So I'm not believing that one. His wingspan's there for a center. His strength's there. You can't come up with any reason whatsoever unless Drake Jackson walked into these meetings and just said, "I hate you. I don't want to be drafted here. I'm for drowning puppies." Like I don't know what's said in those meetings, but I doubt Drake Jackson has said that since he's an outstanding human being. To me, it doesn't make any sense. And it just shows just how incompetent a lot of these teams are. We prop them up as they're these smart decision makers. Like, oh my goodness, they sealed Trevor Lawrence. How that they're just so good at dealing and negotiating. It's like, Dan, you and I could have sat in a room and we could have picked our first round draft pick.
Well, the reason why they were able to pick Trevor Lawrence is because they were so terrible at putting a team together from the start.
Thank you. I'm looking at you, Bengals. Also, it's beyond me that they're like, oh my goodness, they only have 7 minutes to pick. It's like, no, because they pull the trigger so fast. The only teams that are really smart are the ones that you see that are constantly trading, because at that point they're using algorithm. At that point, and I'm sorry for the Bengals front office. An algorithm is when you use math, the one that goes like 2 + 2 = 4, that kind of thing, to come up with a formula and a statistic to make sure that you win. You could have used that when, getting off of lineman until you broke the best quarterback that ever came out of college football. Anyway.
You're really dunking on the Bengals.
I don't know why. You've got a garbage offensive line, the worst offensive line in the league. It's not even close. You've wrecked the best player that you will ever have, ever, a once-in-a-lifetime player. And your first-round draft pick, you went, you know what we need? A wide receiver from the same school as Joe Burrow, because they'll be able to pass good together. I'm like, oh, okay. We just letting some wino off Tate's Creek Road be able to make draft picks now. It's like it's truly unreal, dude.
This is why I converted. This is why I'm a Browns fan now, and it's working out very well.
Exactly. How convenient. You did the Urban Meyer of fandom.
Yeah, man. Well, there's no controversy. My teammates didn't hit their wife, so
That's true. Did Kat write you a cute little note to say, well, if you're going to be a Browns fan, you need to do this?
No, she didn't do that. She just said, I don't want to hear about it. So
she's like, good, whatever, Dan.
So what I've pretty much learned from tonight is we need to get you on one of these 32 teams draft committees so that you can help kind of lead the field for where they can go. You gave me a look.
Now let me say this. I'm not saying I could do any better. All I'm saying is I'll do it for a lot cheaper and you'll get the same result. So this is open to the Bengals organization. If you're tired of your front office, I'll do all the jobs. I'll do all the jobs in the front office. You pay me $1.3 million. That they probably have a total of $10 million in that front office. I'll do it for 1.3. You can sign me to a 2-year contract. That's fine. That's fine. I already talked to my current employer about this. We're all okay with this. And if you lose more than, how many games did the Bengals win last year? 2?
Yeah.
2? Yeah. If they only win 1 game, you fire me on the spot. But the rule is I just have to match the 2 wins.
There you go. Hire him, Bengals. Find him on LinkedIn. You'll see his amazing plethora of background with bug killing and chip selling. So he's very well qualified. But nonetheless, Max, with that kind of caps off our NFL draft here for 2021. And as we get finished with this and get ready for the 2021 season, let's look ahead to the 2022 draft. And I know earlier in the show you mentioned there's a potential for Kentucky to have 10 players in the next draft, potentially. Who are some players that are on this team right now that you think could make a big impact? A guy like Pascal, a guy like Square?
Square, Pascal, Kennard, Fortner, Riggs, Rodriguez, Cavassier Smoke, Corker. Anyway, but I mean, I just list off some guys that's just like that chose to stay. That was shocked. UK could have had more guys go in this. They potentially could have had more people drafted than Alabama this year. That's the part that drives me nuts, is that if you had Josh Paschal go, you had Kennard go, and you had Fortner go, and then if Rodriguez went also, you would have had 10 guys drafted the same as Alabama. There's still a lot of team on this talent on this 2022 team, which don't believe the lies of the sports media. Don't listen to the sports journalists. They're the enemy of the people, or at least the enemy of Kentucky. They are telling you that there's only 60%. There's only 60% production coming back to Kentucky, and it's simply not true. They've got a plethora of talent that was not only star contributors, but were stars as well. So don't believe the lies. This team is deceptively elite. This team can make a run for the SEC East. This team could very, very well put that 2018 team with Josh Allen and Benny Snell to shame if they play their cards right, especially of how this schedule is lined up for them.
You talked a lot about how a lot of this talent is going to be on the defensive side as we talk about Corker and Pascal and Square. But we're going to have a new face on the offense as well as Liam Cohen joins us. And just real quickly, what's your thoughts on Cohen and what he's going to bring to this offense?
I love his mentality with what he said, especially from his first press conference. The guy gets offense. Back at the beginning of the time, the football gods designed the game for the offense to always have the advantage over the defense, simply because a defense, you're taking the talent of a defense and making it defend every blade of grass because they cannot anticipate where the ball's coming. You do that with motions. You do that with different formations. You do it with formation shifts as well. And Liam Cohen's going to be a guy that's going to utilize that, getting a defense confused, going under center, which is rare in college football these days, and really utilizing tight end play, utilizing and crippling cover two protections. So with slant routes, tight end dump passes, screens, the amount that this offense has the capability of doing, and the things I'm hearing about Joey Gatewood out of the spring game or the spring practices. Buckle up, kids. This is not your mama and daddy's Kentucky offense. I think this thing's got a really good chance of just being extremely lethal.
All right. Well, I'm sure at some point here we're going to preview this Kentucky 2021 team, and I can't wait for that. Max, we'll have you back on when that time comes. But Max, just thank you again for coming back on, man, to the show and just taking the time to talk about this draft, talk about all the boys in blue, and just really making shows like these so much fun, man. It's always great to have you on here.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for everything you do. Show's always a blast. And I love the well-roundedness that you you bring to the podcast community with it. So you're doing a heck of a job, man, and it's definitely a top tier program each time.
All right, Max, before we get out of here, where can my listeners find you at one more time?
If you just want to hear me rant about football and Star Wars, follow me on Twitter at ohmygodby64. I'll be talking more during football season. You can catch me on WVOK 97.3 FM after every Kentucky football game with Larry Glover, and we will go through each game and do the call-in show there. And then if you want to catch me at the high school football games, I call the Frederick Douglass high school games for glidecod.com. So you can come chill with us and have a good time.
All right, Max, thank you again for coming on, my brother. Appreciate you so much. And until next time, my man.